We are live.
Awesome.
Wait, are we unmuted on there? Augie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Awesome.
fantastic. Thanks for joining us and welcome. Hey, welcome. Come on in.
Jeff, so like on the minutes, the provost is excused and Carly Saya is excused.
Carly sides with.
Arts and sciences.
Okay.
No, education. Jeremy's arts and sciences.
Yep,
Oof.
I was about to say, wait,
Anyway, so welcome everybody. This is the inaugural meeting of the 2022-2023 Tuition and Fee Strategies Committee. So we'll go ahead and start with attendance. Jeff, is your calling attendance if folks just want to say like their name, their major, what college they're representing, or for our administrators in the room, what your position on the administration is. You can go down the roll, Jeff.
Perfect. Parker
Court
Vogelmore.
jester.
Yeah, hey everyone. I am in fact here. My name is Parker Vogelmore, currently serving as a student body president. I'm a senior in the College of Agriculture, studying agricultural economics, pre-law. So as student body president, I get to co-chair this committee alongside Evan. So
Evan Porter.
Evan Porter, Speaker of the Student Senate, a senior studying political science in the College of Arts and Sciences. Like Parker said, we are going to co-chair these meetings this year.
Perfect. Bryson Warren.
Yeah, my name is Bryson Warren. I'm majoring in agricultural economics. I represent the College of Ag.
Perfect. Jeremy.
I'm Jeremy Cannon. I'm a senator for the College of Arts and Sciences. I'm a physics major, minor in classical studies and in geophysics.
Cameron James Rose.
Cool. My name is Cameron James Rose. I'm a senior studying finance. I'm here representing the College of Business. So, yeah.
And I haven't gotten his name yet.
Jack Cannell. Did the minutes I sent you not have everyone's name plugged in?
Mm-mm.
Oh, I thought I'd done that. Anyway,
Who's he with?
engineering.
Engineering. Perfect. All right. Well, now you don't need
The man who needs no introduction.
My name is Jack Hamill. I'm majoring in cybersecurity, and I will be representing the University of Engineering Freshman.
great. Thanks for joining us, Jack.
Not present with us today, but joining us from the College of Education will be Carly Saya. For those of you that maybe recognize that last name, that's Nick's younger sister. We are still waiting to hear back from the graduate school about a potential appointment from them. And then I'll get to Augie on Zoom. We are still looking actively for architecture, planning and design and health and human sciences. That health and human sciences one I think is going to be critical because they're one of the colleges we'll be reviewing this year. But Augie, if you want to introduce yourself, go ahead.
Yes, hi, I'm Augie Chappis. I am representing the K-State Salina campus out here in Salina, and I am a senior majoring in UAS design.
Hello, everyone. My name is Blake Phillips. I serve as an ex officio role on this committee as the Student Services Fee Committee Chair. I'm a senior in Management Information Systems and Supply Chain Management.
I'm Thomas Lane, Vice President for Student Life and Leading Students. I serve in an ex officio role on this committee. Happy to be here.
So Thomas is the court jester.
That's right.
I'm the chief cat herder. Ethan Erickson, Vice President of Administration and Finance. I'm also ex officio to the committee as well.
Like that title.
Yeah, I just.
Also joining us, but couldn't be here with us this week, will be the provost, Chuck Tabor. The provost has COVID this week, so he is at home resting, recovering. But he will be here with us for some of the meetings in the future. Provost has a slim availability on Tuesdays, so he'll be in and out. But this will generally be the group, and then we'll get those 3 other college vacancies filled here pretty shortly. I'm hoping to have those 3 folks by next week when the engineering review starts, so they can be here when Dean O'Keefe gives his presentation. But we're going to teach you a little bit about what those presentations are going to look like and kind of establish some context around the work we're going to do here in TFSC. Parker, you want to pull up the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, this is our orientation for this evening. So obviously it is October 4th, 2022. Like I said in my email this afternoon, we'll meet here in the CSI conference room every week that we call those meetings. Generally, we'll try to get those agendas sent out to you by like Thursday or Friday, the week prior to the meeting, just so you have time to like digest and get that put on your calendar and everything. But yeah, you want to go to the next slide? So just to establish a little bit of historical context about the Tuition and Fee Strategies Committee. Dating back all the way to 2001, so 21 years ago, the university proposed reviewing tuition in sort of like a 5-year chunk at a time, and making those substantial increases to tuition and fees over those 5 years to sort of get caught up to some of our peer institutions in the state. And then in 2005, SGA and some students on campus called the Special Committee to Study Long-Term Tuition Strategies, which again would study tuition on a 5-year basis, just looking 5 years at a time down the road. And then when that first 5-year cycle expired there in 2010, there was a permanent committee established called just the Tuition Strategies Committee. That was a collaboration between administration, faculty, and students. That was done sort of like born out of some uncertainty at the Board of Regents and the fact that it was kind of unfeasible for students alone to evaluate the overall tuition structure at the university. And then in 2014, it became the Tuition and Fees Strategies Committee. So in the SGA bylaws where this is established, we took on the programmatic fee side of things. And then last year, what were known as college tuition committees were redefined and sort of clarified and codified in the bylaws as college fee committees. And Parker and I will, touch on those a little bit more later. But Dr. Lane, Ethan, do either of you have anything to add sort of about the history of the committee?
I don't think so. No, I think you covered it well.
Cool, great. So this adds just a little bit of color and context to what Evan just sort of described. So this only goes back to fiscal year 2009, but in the blue bars along the chart there, you can see the increases to student tuition as it's ticked along. And then also along the same sort of time frame, you can see the decrease in the state general fund in the yellow bars as those tick down. So just like a high level view of what this is depicting. It's the overall, not overall, but for the most part, the revenue generation portion part of the university's budget. So it's going to be about the operating budget, and this is where Ethan, you can kind of come in, but to some extent, it's shared pretty equally here. We can see between student tuition and the state general fund. Now, what this graph doesn't depict is it only goes up to fiscal year 2019.
Ethan, if this looks familiar, I think this might have been pulled off one of the KBOR first reads from fiscal year 20, maybe.
Okay, I was gonna say, if you guys want to reach out to my office, we could update that for you.
We could update that, yeah,
and
which
get
we probably
some
should
more-
do because
Yeah.
should
Things
you
have
see
changed a little
the
bit.
next couple of years,
Yeah, that's why.
Yes.
yeah, tuition has actually frozen. It's 2 years now.
Three.
3
Third
years.
fiscal year.
Okay, so tuition has stayed the same. And we actually had an uptick in the state general fund. But
Do you want me to?
Sure,
So
go
just to
ahead.
add some more flavor.
Yeah, please.
So you're spot on. If you go to 20, 21, 22, you're gonna see that blue line, the student tuition line, really take a pretty steep nosedive as we've been under enrollment declines. I think the data came out just the other day. We've gone from 24,000, a little over 24,000 at our peak in 2014 to under 20,000, a level we've not seen since 1988 as a university. So a rather large decline in our student population, and then obviously our tuition revenues. So if you go back to 8 and 9, the funding split for our general university base was about 60-40, 60% state funding, 40% tuition funding. It's now, I used to say it flipped to where it was more 60-40 tuition support, but actually because of our enrollment decline and because this last year for FY23, the state actually came in and appropriated quite a bit of funding for all of higher ed, and then K-State got a share of that. So we're actually a little bit closer to, I'd say a 55-45. We're still more dependent on tuition at the moment than we do with state funds. So that's just a little flavor of kind of how that's progressed over time. And we're happy to give you some updated numbers too.
yeah, perfect, thanks. So why that's relevant, what it means for us in this room and this committee. So some of the founding principles of TFSC and why we exist and what we hope to do. So these are the sort of principles that were outlined through the TFSC process as this committee has kind of changed and evolved throughout the years. But number one, we want to balance the needs of the university with affordability for all students. We also want to preserve transparency of tuition fees, surcharges, and the review process. We want to maintain a tuition and fee structure that is simple and easy to communicate. We want to remain competitive in both the resident and non-resident student markets. So essentially what that's kind of pointing to is, as we've seen enrollment decline and we've seen changes in state funding over the years, what we're going to look at a little bit, hopefully as we get into the year, is discuss kind of the strategies and what we value with not only the tuition, but also fees, as we're going to look at really more in depth and more specifically is the college fees, and then potentially even an opportunity to evaluate kind of a high level, long-term view of our student services fee and how we balance the need to fund student services, and we need to, have these funds and these fees for individual colleges and meet the needs of students. Yet at the same time, the number one challenge for students, as we've seen in a number of surveys, is affordability. So how do you balance those kind of almost competing principles? But those are some of the things we'll kind of talk about. But now we'll get more here into like what that's actually going to look like and what our more specific legislative rules are as it relates to college fees and things. So
Yeah, so I wanted to touch briefly on some of our expectations, establish some expectations with you and the administrators for what we're doing here, how we're going to conduct ourselves in these meetings, things like that. So individual expectations that I have for myself, and Parker, you can touch on this a little bit, is just making sure that we're transparent with all of you and the deans that are coming in. The deans are taking their time out to come present to this committee on like the status of their fees within their college and the status of the college generally. So we want to make sure that we're being respectful of the dean's time and that we're asking good questions that really apply to the actual fee. Like when Dean O'Keefe comes in here, you'd be like, oh, hey, Dean O'Keefe, like what's the deal with concrete canoe? Like we don't want to waste the dean's time. So we want to make sure that we're asking good questions that apply to the purpose of the committee. Nothing really more than that. Just be respectful of their time and their efforts that they do in terms of like running the college and putting together those presentations and everything. And then transparency, we want to make sure that students know the processes that we're going through here in this committee. So this is an open meeting. Anyone's welcome to come. I think the Collegian has come a couple times in the past if they're interested in writing articles on things. And part of that means sometimes there's going to be conversations that we just can't have in this open forum and that people aren't comfortable having in terms of like the budget model or enrollment statistics. Those are just things that we're going to have to maybe go without discussing. And that's fine because we want to preserve that like open, transparent environment with students and the student body. So those are kind of the big things that I wanted to discuss in terms of like our expectations. Parker, did you have anything?
Yeah, and then the only thing I would add just from you all and from us as co-chairs, this is, I know, super confusing as we kind of go through this whole thing, especially today in the orientation. And we haven't even really got to what our like what we're actually going to do the first 5 or 6 meetings or so throughout the semester. So we'll get to that. But I would just say if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to stop. There's no question too dumb. I'm going to try to explain it to myself as like I was a month ago when I didn't understand any of this. So we'll try to not dumb it down, maybe isn't the right term, but there's no question too small, I guess, as we kind of go about, especially outlining what we're going to be talking about. So
yeah, so just next thing briefly to give you all kind of an overview of who all sits on this committee. So as Parker and I said at the beginning of the meeting, we will co-chair these meetings. I know last year Michael and Blake did like a sort of back and forth thing. Parker and I are going to sort of like settle on a good arrangement in terms of chairing the meetings. And then we have a representative from every academic college except for VetMed, because VetMed has a sort of different way that they assess tuition and fees for their students that's evaluated independently of the overall university model. We also have a representative coming from the Salina campus, and then those asterisked individuals. So the student body vice president, student services fee chair, vice president for student life, vice president for administration and finance, the provost, and then the faculty senate president are all ex officio that sit on this committee. And we actually have a designee from President Saucier this year because he wasn't able to make this meeting time work. So Philip Payne will, moving forward, be our representative from faculty senate because President Saucier was not available at this time. Any questions about the structure, who all is on the committee, anything like that?
Awesome. Okay, cool. So we talked a little bit, just kind of high level of the strategies and things like that, the context for the creation of the committee. Now we're going to transition a little bit to talk more specifically what we're going to be discussing and what this is going to look like in the committee. So over the next, 6 meetings, we're going to be, one of the main roles of this committee is to review college fees. So to zoom out even further, what that means is as students, we all pay tuition, we all pay the student services fee, and then depending upon your colleges, you likely pay another college fee. So those fees are reviewed on a 3-year cycle through the tuition and fee strategies committee, which is this committee. So this year, we're going to be looking at the college fee for the College of Engineering. So as you can see in October, that's going to be our first 3 meetings. We're gonna go through their presentation, a Q&A round, and then make a decision on that. And Evan will go more into what that actual process looks like. Then in November, we're gonna do the Health and Human Sciences, their college fee. After that, well, actually, we're gonna draw a line there because then there's a different kind of role we'll have with that. But essentially, this committee will be reviewing the engineering college fee and the Health and Human Sciences college fee. Without going into too many more details, does anybody have any questions kind of about what that is or what that means? Okay, perfect. So then after that, the next sort of thing that's happening right around this time is all the other colleges are putting together their proposals if they want to increase or change their fees. So any college is eligible to be able to do that. So say my college, the College of Agriculture, determines that they need to add $5 fee to all ag students for IT or something like that. They can submit that proposal to the provost by the December 6th deadline. Provost will get that back to us. And then should that be approved by the provost, then we'll actually go into a fee proposal review process. So that's a little more in depth, and we'll go more into what that looks like in a second. But I want you to understand there's kind of 2 big things with fees we're going to do. We're going to review the 2 fees for sure. And then we could potentially split up and review potential proposals going forward. Now, it won't actually be this committee that really dives deep into the proposals, but we'll talk more about what that structure kind of looks like. But we're reviewing the 2 fees. We could potentially be evaluating the review of proposals. So I know that gets super confusing. It's even a little bit hard to explain. So is there any questions with that? Okay, I'm sure there will be at some point. And then as it sort of goes down the line, what that actually looks like as a fee is, say, proposed. So let's go back to the College of Agriculture fee. Then we would create what's called a college fee committee, which is what Evan briefly mentioned earlier. And that will be a committee made up of just College of Agriculture students who will review the merits of that fee. They'll determine if it's valuable and it's a good use of resources for students. And then that will come back to us, which is up on the next row in February. If the CFC committee approves that College of Ag fee, then it'll come back to us in TFSC, and essentially we'll just approve the process. And if the CFC followed the correct process and we sort of agree with the way they came about their decision, then we issue the final kind of thumbs up or thumbs down, just approving the process by which they followed. After that, we take in April, we'll issue a recommendation on tuition and fees to the president. So likely what we'll do in this group is if Ethan's office puts together a tuition proposal, so a decrease, staying the same, an increase, whatever that looks like, this can be a first kind of sounding board of students to give a student stamp of approval on whatever that is to weigh the merits of potentially a tuition increase. We could potentially do the same thing for a student services fee increase. But then also we'll submit our final proposals. So when we reviewed the College of Engineering and HHS, we reviewed those. We'll submit those proposals and all other recommendations to the president in April. And that sets up along with the timeline. So by May, no matter what work we all did here to approve or disapprove, the final say goes to the Board of Regents. And so they'll be the ones to finally put the final stamp of approval on whether that's going to be approved or disapproved. And that'll happen. The first reading will be in May, and then they'll make the final decision, that last point there in June. So
Ethan, were you still hoping for a May first read, or were you thinking April this year?
No, it's usually May is when K-Board wants to have that first read.
Okay,
Could I add a little flavor though, Parker? Could you go back to
Please,
that slide? The April, when we bring to this committee kind of what the university is thinking about tuition, it increases or whatever we decide we're gonna do. It's a bit of a delicate dance because K-Board doesn't want it out in the public realm necessarily, what we're doing until that first reading, which actually happens in May at the mid-May K-Board meeting. But because materials are due, we always have to turn it in about a month in advance. And so knowing that this is a public meeting, we're usually kind of scheduling that meeting out and then really like the day or two before we actually turn our materials into K-Board. So it gets a look, we'll work with you all on trying to schedule that out, but just understand that's kind of part of the reason why we obviously want your input and your feedback on the request, but we kind of schedule it around the open meeting requirement here, but also K-Board's requirement. Don't go too broadly with what you want to ask for until the full board has an opportunity to see it and have input on it. So I just add that as a little flavor for April. Not that you'll remember by then.
perfect. Okay, so going to go into a little more depth on a few.
Like us,
Yeah, right. So back into a little more depth on a few of these things we discussed. So real quickly, we mentioned the review process. So that's the first thing we're gonna do here this semester. We're gonna review, we're in year B. So this shows the 3 years that we've outlined for the reviews. So this year we're gonna be year B, College of Engineering, Human Ecology, HHS, just like we talked about. Okay,
this kind
So
of dates this PowerPoint a little bit.
that's, yeah, so that's just kind of shows you that. And we've sent this PowerPoint out too, so if you want to go more into depth to kind of read all of that between the lines, you're welcome to.
Yeah, so basically the way this will work, it's 3 meeting cycle, so that at that first meeting is when the dean will come in and do a presentation, and Ethan's office has pulled revenue expense, is it for the past 3 fiscal years, Ethan?
Yeah.
So revenue and expense reports for the past 3 fiscal years, so how much money did they collect from their course fees and how much did they spend and what did they spend it on, stuff like that. The dean will come in and give us a more in-depth look, basically about what I said, like how much did they collect, what have they been spending it on, and one of the elements that we'll analyze also is, was that consistent with what they proposed the fee for in the first place? If so, the example that we always give, if Dean O'Keefe went out and like bought himself a Ferrari, that does not really align with what the initial approval of that fee was for from the students that were on that original committee that sort of brought the fee into existence. So this committee will really dive deep into, is Dean O'Keefe spending the money that he went the way that he said he would? Are they collecting how much they projected they would? And how does that line up with how much they've been spending, so on and so forth. So that presentation will happen at the first meeting. Then there'll be questions, time for questions maybe at the end of the presentation meeting, but there will be a whole second meeting that really is just for questions. So if at the end of the presentation time, you all have questions, give them to Dean O'Keefe so he can have time to do a little bit more research and prepare and come back with responses and be ready to answer more questions that we come up with during the meeting. And then there'll be a third meeting that Dean O'Keefe will probably not be present for, where we discuss what we thought of the presentation, what we're thinking in terms of the fee, whether we agree with the way that they've been spending the money, so on and so forth. And we will make that final decision as to whether there's one of 2 outcomes. If Parker, you want to go to the next slide?
Yep.
There's a couple different outcomes that we can do in terms of that fee. So outcome 1, we approve the utilization of the fee, which is just giving our thumbs up that the college has been spending the money the way they said they would. Outcome 2 is disapproval of the fee. So that means that the college is placed on probation. We compile a report to the president and the provost explaining why we disapproved it. And the college has to report to TFSC again next year. And we can again do an analysis, make a recommendation about whether we should continue, reduce, or terminate the fee. So in the event that that fee does go on probation, TFSC then has the power to just change the fee if they think that the college is, for lack of a better term, like abusing its students, over collecting, spending the money on wrong things, so on and so forth. We've never placed a fee on probation, to my knowledge. Yeah, I've never heard of us having placed a fee on probation. So in the event that we do, that will be a bit of a learning process for all of us, but we'll cross that, never mind. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Okay, so we'll just pause here again, just so everybody understands. Our next 3 meetings, this is the process we're gonna go through for the College of Engineering fee review. We're gonna have their presentation, the question and answer round, and then we'll issue the decision, which is the approval or disapproval of their fee utilization. Then the next 3 meetings, we're gonna do the same thing for HHS, and this will be the decision we made. So that's the review part, the college fee review part of this committee. Does anybody have any questions about that aspect of what we're gonna be doing?
So this will, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, check.
Should people who are part of these specific colleges that we're reviewing, is there anything special that they are doing, or are they just representing, and it doesn't really make that much difference?
Yeah, I think there's not really anything uniquely special that you have to do as part of the review process. Like, you'll have a bit of better perspective in terms of like how the money gets collected and how much you're paying and everything like that. But in terms of whether the fee is being spent correctly or not, you might be able to provide some perspective on like if you're seeing the benefit of the fee as a student. But when it comes to approving or disapproving of the utilization, there's not much more that you are involved in as a student from the college.
You provide especially valuable input for sure from your perspective, but yeah, not necessarily anything specific, but good question.
But you will come into play
On
for this next part that we're going to talk about.
Yeah. But reviews, any other questions on the reviews? Okay, so that's gonna be our next 6 meetings. That's what we're gonna do. That's gonna be our primary focus. Now, this next part may or may not even come into play at all. But so we'll go through this just kind of quick, so you guys have an idea of what that'll look like, and you'll know what those expectations will be should it come into play. But that's gonna be the fee proposal process. So this is back to that example of the College of Ag proposing a $5 increase. So what'll happen is, just real quick to go through this, college will submit their proposal to the provost. The provost then approves proposal to proceed. If that happens, the TFSC selects and initiates the college fees committee. Okay, and then the college will present to that college fees committee and holds open forums. So we'll go through like a whole nother kind of subsidiary review process for that proposal, but it's only going to be composed of students from that college. So that's where you'll have a really important role. So in this case, Bryson and I would work together, and then we alternate. If there's multiple CFCs, either Evan or I will chair those, and we'll work with you folks. But again, the College of Ag example, Bryson and I will work and we'll fill a committee from that college where we will hold open forums and then ultimately come to a decision where we will recommend the approval or disapproval of the proposal back to this committee. So then it comes back to this committee where TFSC will either recommend approval or disapproval of the proposal to the president, which essentially that's where we just say, yeah, the proper process was followed by the college fees committee. Then we can just give the thumbs up or thumbs down. Then we send it back to the president, who has the say to finally pass it on to the Board of Regents.
University president.
University
Not this
president.
president.
Yeah, sorry.
There has been
I don't know
confusion
about
about that in the
that.
past. People thinking that Parker runs the whole university.
So again, I don't want to get too into the depth and too many into the weeds too much with this. But do want to kind of go over it, so you guys have a kind of an idea, but we'll go back, we'll reference these 2 slides again at some point in our meetings, should this come into play, if there is a proposal. So
just to break it down a little bit, like Parker mentioned, when we call those committees, it'll be chaired by him or me and co-chaired or co-ran by the TFSC representative from that college. So Jack, like you were saying earlier, if engineering brings forward a proposal, you would work with either Parker or I to like run those college fee committee meetings. There could be other TFSC representatives present to ask questions, but really it's just left up to people from within the college. The provost, the VPSL, and the VPAF are more than welcome to go to those meetings, but typically we will just discuss what's happening in those meetings in our regularly scheduled TFSCs. And then the voting structure of those college fee committees are half of the members of the respective college caucus from within student senate. So half the engineering student senators or half the ag student senators would be on those committees. And then a group of college leaders, which totals 3 more than the number in the caucus, from the college council, multicultural student organization from within that specific college, at least 1 freshman, 1 sophomore, 1 junior, 1 senior, and 1 grad student. And then Parker and I can fill in as necessary. to form like the voting membership that will get to like be there, ask the questions, get the responses from the deans, really dig into that specific college fee structure. And then, like Parker mentioned, they'll vote on it and send it back to TFSC. TFSC will vote on it to sort of certify that the process was followed correctly, and then send that on to the university president.
Evan, one quick correction for that slide. The TFSC rep is not voting.
Non-voting, okay,
Yeah.
sure. Sounds good. Yeah, because they will chair those meetings. What happens if there's a tie?
Then the chair will break it.
Okay, sounds good. But yeah, I know that was kind of a lot, but that's just a little overview of what that process will look like. But like Parker mentioned, we'll get more in depth on that in the event that we have to. But yeah, does anyone have any questions about anything that we talked about today? Or Dr. Lane, Ethan, do you have anything to add?
I think I'd just add that I think it's good for us to just be mindful that this is really an important committee. And I've worked at other institutions, and it's rare that you see this level of student involvement in terms of overall tuition strategy. So I think that's a really great opportunity at K-State that really reflects the shared governance spirit. And so what I would encourage you to think about that as you're forming questions and to really take this role seriously, because it is indeed an important position that you have on this committee that helps set the structure and stage for future students and current students.
You stole my point. That's
I'm
what
sorry.
I- I think even within the Board of Regents system, this is a pretty unique relationship and kind of evidenced I've seen in, I think last year, where you guys came up to the podium and right beside us as we're presenting the tuition proposal and package. And it was very powerful, I think, for the board to see that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Something you'll hear a lot is like, well, what's the temperature of the regions? What are the regions thinking in terms of like whether or not we like want to waste the political capital to bring proposals forward? But we'll talk more about that and cross that road when we get to
If
it.
you can ever figure that out, let me know.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions now that we've kind of just went through everything? I know real quickly here. I have one last sort of thing we'll show you real quick before we head out to make sure we're good and prepared for next week as we kick off the review process. I do want to have the opportunity for any other questions or comments from anybody.
We will have, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So for those few spots that I guess we're still like missing, so like
Mhm.
health and
Yeah.
College of HHS, are those people picked yet, or are you still in the process?
We're still looking for folks. For lots of scheduling conflicts, Tuesday nights are busy for a lot of people, so we're still like very actively looking. If you have friends in the College of Architecture, Planning and Design or in the College of Health and Human Sciences, please like direct them our way if they're interested, like maybe
Or the
get-
graduate school.
Or the graduate school, get them interested, because we want, especially for HHS, since their review will be coming up, we definitely want that seat for sure filled and that person here present when Dean Harms is presenting. But I think having every academic college is something that's really important. So we want to make sure those get filled as quickly as possible. Thanks. Awesome. Yeah, that was a good question, Bryce. But yeah, next week we will have Dean Harms and one of his assistant deans will come with him also to be able to answer some of the questions about like the technical aspects.
I was just going to add, you mentioned it earlier, my office has been working to develop sort of a fiscal accounting of the fees, the revenue and expenditures. And we have worked with each of the colleges to make sure that they reconcile to our numbers. So just so you have that sort of as background that we've been working with them to make sure, okay, let's make sure we tie out. between the two of us, so.
Okay, great. So before our meeting next week, that'll be the presentation. So you don't necessarily need to have a ton of questions or anything prepared ahead of time for that meeting, but just come ready to take notes with an inquisitive mind so that for our following meeting, we can have lots of good questions ready to roll. Here real quick, we just wanted to share the College of Business presentation that they had for last year, just so you can have an idea of kind of what information will be on that. So they had 2 college fees to review. So that's what those were. They really broke it down really well through this PowerPoint. So hopefully we have similar information to work off of from engineering, but they went all the way down to the purpose, and it got very in the weeds as to how that was implemented through 3 different phases. It was a stepped fee and what that looked like. They talked about the support and everybody who came on board to make this fee happen. They talked about the impact for students and how it's been affected in different majors and departments within, or even, I guess those are classes, so lower class sizes.
And
So,
this was Blake, you said that this was a really good presentation.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
was, we use this as a model to send out to.
So I
colleges.
sent this one to Dean O'Keefe, so his might look pretty similar to what we've got up here. but-
so it talked about, yeah, they were able to expand curriculum with this fee. Yeah, and then this goes into the pretty much the same information for the second fee. So again, really what we're looking for is that this fee was utilized as they had initially proposed it would be. And that students are receiving the sort of benefit that was anticipated or you look for. So that's really about it. And we've got meetings and maybe an intramural football game here to run to. So,
Stay injury free.
yeah, absolutely. But we'll be sharing all the materials, the agenda, and any materials that are shared with us before the meeting next week, next Tuesday.
If Dean O'Keefe sends me his presentation before we send out or even after I've sent out the agenda, I'll make sure that you all have that in your inbox for, if you can't be here for the presentation for whatever reason. Just make sure that you go over that and you can have it open while we're hearing his presentation, but yeah.
Cool. Well, if there's no other questions for today, we'll go ahead and adjourn until next week.
Well done.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Wait, what was this? Go Cats.